Hey everyone, this is Mayan Gordon, owner of Mayan Gordon Media, and I am here today with a really special guest. This is Rich Cardona. I met Rich through LinkedIn a good couple of months ago now. I think really when I was on the beginning of my rise here on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and he was kind enough to let me be a speaker and a guest on his podcast. And so, of course, I'm back returning the favor. That's not the only reason that he's here today, though. He has a really great story to share with you guys with a lot of lessons that I think are going to bring you guys a ton of value. So, Rich, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to people? Who are you? What are you all about?
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for having me. And please do check out that podcast because it's one of the most popular ones. She definitely drops. We get into some good real talk about why TikTok is just fun and you don't have to focus as much as people think and all these other things. But it was fantastic. So thanks for that. Me, very quickly. Let's see, right there behind me. Right there. Retired Marine, did 17 years, retired early. I always like to say I got an MBA because I felt like I wasn't going to be marketable enough with my experience. And, I'm not sure how my classmates take it, but I definitely didn't need it. I now wish I could have reevaluated all those hours I spent in that classroom learning a lot of things that I don't really care about. But that's okay because it landed me at Amazon. So I had an experience there for a couple years, which is probably going to be a good part of what we're going to talk about. And that couple years was a lot of self-discovery, a lot of bad behaviors, a lot of character flaws, a lot of lacking self-awareness and really kind of auditing who I was and what I was about until everything came to a head. I quit and launched my own business. And that in itself was just a weird escalation of ideas and trial and error. And here we are. And I'm thrilled. I've never been happier. And I was just telling my wife, I sighed really big. We're sitting at the table and she's like, what? I'm like, my schedule is so full, but it's a great problem to have. This is work I love to do, and that's why I could do it every day over and over the same way you do, and you're live all the time. So that's what I'm about. And my branding, really quick, video marketing is what we do. We do video marketing for busy business owners, CEOs who just don't even know where to get started. We film, edit, and distribute. That's besides the point, but that's what we do, and I love it because I know, and how hard it is to make lots and lots of content, and that's just something to really help someone take off their plate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you so much for your service. I have a huge amount of respect for anyone who's been in the military, but certainly, to make a whole career out of it before you then switch careers into something completely different. So I want to kind of start back then. How was that transition from military life to civilian life for you? And what specifically did you do in the military? What was your job then? And what was your job at Amazon when you came into that?
Yeah. So I'll start with that, and then I'll just kind of walk right into the transition.
Yeah, and real quick, if you guys have questions for Rich, make sure to post them in the comments, and I will try to get to those, and we'll bring them up because he is a wealth of information, experience, and talent.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you. So it's good to see a lot of you. I see Kevin, Adam, Chris, Jorge. Good to see a lot of you. So here's the deal. I talk about self-awareness a lot. You and I are obviously very big Gary Vee fans, but here's the thing. My first self-aware moment, and I didn't realize this till many years later, was in high school, I knew I was going to be in trouble if I graduated because I didn't think I could go to college. My parents probably couldn't afford to send me to college, and I was doing a lot of illegal things all the time. So as a junior, I joined the delayed entry program, which kind of essentially enlisted me in the Marine Corps. So after my senior year, that was it. So that was my self-aware moment because I knew I had to do something. And no one encouraged me to do it. No one asked me to do it. It was just a self decision. So I did that. And in the military, I started off at the bottom. I was a private, an E1. I went to Paris Island, South Carolina, did boot camp. And 3 years into it, which I went in 1998, do the math, 2001. So we were overseas in Japan during 9/11. I literally was with friends from the South, and we were in Japan, and they're from Louisiana, Arkansas. I forget where the other one was from. Really good friends of mine. And they're watching TV. They're like, Rich, check this out. Does this seem possible to you that a plane could fly into the World Trade Center? And I was just like, I know, you know, and as we're talking, we watched the other one hit, and then we knew, like, okay, like
It
now
was so
everything.
surreal. Yeah, I mean, I remember being a kid and watching that on TV and coming into school and everyone talking about it and it being like devastating, really.
It was unprecedented, and we didn't sleep forever. We were all just watching over and over. We were on a boat within a couple days, and away we went. So not long after that, I reenlisted. So what I thought was going to be 4 years, I'm like, well, how could I leave now? And turned into 17 years. But I was enlisted. I eventually was doing a couple jobs in the Marine Corps, marksmanship instruction, and things that made me feel like I could do more. And the really kind of weird part of me, which I mean, I probably wasn't thinking about it the right way, but I was like, I'd rather be giving the orders than taking the orders. And that was just out of not wanting to be enlisted, which my enlisted time is so unbelievably valuable. But I put myself on a track to do that. I told the right people, I did the work, and then I went and got a degree at Florida State, 2 degrees at Florida State, went back, and then I continued my service as a pilot. And that was, I mean, that was insane. Like, Mayan, there's nothing about me that anyone knows before me becoming a pilot that would probably lead anyone to think I would ever do that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So a lot of multitasking, a lot of knowledge, a lot of unbelievably high standards, and a lot of danger, I would say. So there was
what type of aircraft did you fly?
It was attack helicopters. It was a Huey. Huey.
Cool.
So yeah, they're amazing helicopters. And that time in my life at my squadron was the greatest time of my life, and also the worst because of some of the people we lost. But it shaped everything about who I am, and it really ties into my time at Amazon, as a matter of fact. And then that's what I did. So I accumulated all these skills. And then ultimately, like I said, I didn't feel like I was marketable enough. I literally had this irrational fear that no one was going to care about what I did. And it wasn't about this veteran thing. Like, there's a stigma with us. I didn't think that. I just thought, this industry, whatever industry I want, they're going to be like, yeah, it translates. But, and I just really saw a pattern of people leaning on leadership as like, they're really good skills. Right. I'm like, it's just not enough. Like, that's not what they want to hear. So I transitioned, and I always describe it with this one word. It was a visceral transition. I did everything I could. I got on LinkedIn. I networked. I went to all the transition programs.
What year was this for context?
What's that?
What year was this for context?
Oh, that was 2015. I was retiring.
Okay,
and
cool.
I couldn't get a job. I was getting offered the most BS, and I took the most BS job, a sales job, and it was awful. And then eventually I ended up at Amazon, but it was a visceral experience because you doubt everything about yourself. And it's not like I dismissed what I did, but it made me feel like, why did I stay in so long? I could have done all this and been caught up with everybody. Now I'm starting from scratch. Like, I knew where I stood. I knew how to move up. And now I was just in this strange place. So when I landed there, ultimately I was like, okay, now I felt like I was going to be a father. So I'm like, I'm going to be a provider, and here we go. And now I've finally arrived, and it turned out not to be the case.
So let's dive into that, because it does. On paper, that sounds like dream job. Like, you struggled through this period where you had all this doubt because the results weren't coming. And of course, that's the natural kind of thought process that we have, is to go, I know I'm good enough, but if I'm good enough, how come then I'm not getting the jobs that I should be getting? Into Amazon, what happened next? What was the job that you had at Amazon? And I heard you in the beginning talk about getting into all sorts of, I'd say, bad habits and behaviors. What were those, and what were the causes and reasons as to why you were doing those things?
Yeah, and I've definitely never been like live speaking about this, so.
Well, we appreciate your bravery on all levels.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Look, here's the first thing I'll say. My experience is my experience. So I like, can you imagine me saying I don't order anything from them because I didn't have a good work experience? Like, no, like, they're tip of the spear, they're forward thinking, all that great stuff. But my experience, and many other people I know whose experience, was just a poor one. So here's what I know. In the first couple days of training, I was like, and my job was going to be in operations in a warehouse. And I remember I did a lot of homework and I just wanted to see the inside of a fulfillment center. I just wanted to see it. I wanted to see the tempo. I wanted to see the vibe. I wanted to just feel for myself. And they're like, no. And I'm like, of course not. Now I know. But I went in and we went to training. Our facility wasn't ready yet in Austin, Texas. So we were in around the Tampa, Florida area. And, we went and I can't explain it, but I just knew I was not in the right place. And here's something completely unrelated, but this absolutely shows you the difference between the military and civilian life. And this is not me attacking the civilian world or anything like that.
No, lay the facts on us.
This is a story that I'll never ever forget. So we're a few weeks into training down there. It's, I don't know, 5 something in the morning. I'm driving down whatever highway in Tampa. It's pouring and I am going on my way and I see on the highway headlights pointing at me on my side.
On your side. Okay, yeah, on your side of the road.
Like there's a huge median and like it's on my side. I'm like, what is happening? So I couldn't screech because it was raining. Well, it was lightly raining, I guess. I don't want to exaggerate. And I'm like, okay, so I stop. And then I see one car, that car's facing me, and then there's a car upside down. It's a van, and it's upside down and like kind of the median, which is grass and a little bit of a ditch. So I got out, I put my emergency lights on, and then I start hearing cars screeching behind me. I'm like, I'm the biggest idiot. Like I just put myself in an immense amount of danger. So I went back, moved it, went to the van, and there's an elderly couple who was inside. They were like trapped inside. They couldn't get out on either side. So we got the trunk open, helped them out. Cops arrive, all these other things. Now why am I telling you this story? What does this have to do with anything? To me, it was like one thing to confront that, but my desire is always to be in demand for a situation like that, like to just be someone who wants to help. Yeah. So I did that. I was wearing my work vest, which is a big reflector vest. So traffic on the other 3 lanes now is coming to a crawl. People are going by, and then I get to work late, training late. And then I saw 3 of my coworkers and they're just like, hey, dude, we saw you. What happened? I'm like, what? I'm like, you saw me?
They saw you and just passed you by.
Yes. Where anybody I know in the Marine Corps would have been like helping.
Yeah.
And just like, we would have just taken over that thing together. And I was like beside myself, not because I was ever in danger or anything like that, but I was just like, so what did you say to the senior managers? Like, Rich, I can't explain it, but that feeling is so fresh to me still. So I was like, okay, that's the difference. So that was my second big indicator. And then my last indicator was very simple. And again, this was my experience, but there was no one I looked up to. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I was surrounded by some of the most fascinating, humble, talented, just surreal leaders in the military, and some of which, passed. And here I am, and I could not shake the feeling that no one was really invested in the people. So against my financial advisor's judgment, I'm like, I can't stay. She's like, you have to stay. I'm like, I cannot do this. So here's a big mistake I made, Mayan. I started calling veterans in other parts of the company, like, dude, or hey, like, I'd look up just to see people's profiles and be like, okay, they were in the Army, I could trust them. Like, is this how it is? Like, I can't do this. And I just feel like these people were too far in to where they're like, wouldn't say anything.
They were pot committed to where they got you, but they weren't going to take the action or even really probably support you in that conversation because they'd lost. They'd been too deep in, and they'd lost that freshness of it sounds so much to me like a lack of commitment is really what you felt. A lack of commitment towards like the humanity of people and team, and they were just so focused on their cushy jobs, or at least maybe even just the brand or image of the company, and being more focused on that than the people itself.
Well, what I think, and that is so dead on. And I think what I felt was that these people got used to it. And I'm like, this is Act 2. This is my life. I don't want to get used to anything. However, I got a relocation, got, this nice lucrative bonus, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay. So in my mind, I'm like kind of tied to it. And how could I
Right.
possibly go back to my wife and now my daughter who's getting born, who wasn't born yet, who's about to be born, and be like, okay, well, we got to move out and all this other stuff. So I try to finagle my way to another type of role or whatever. And then I'll never forget my general manager's like, it's unnerving how on the fence you are. I'm like, yeah, imagine being me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like to me you were really struggling between the commitment to yourself and the commitment that you felt to your family. It had almost nothing to do with even wanting to keep the job for you. It was you wanted to keep that job to support and provide for your family, and that's probably just as much a part of your core as feeling like the people you work with need to have that level of commitment. That must have been, I imagine, a really stressful, difficult time. How did that affect you and kind of play out on even like a day-to-day basis? Did you have like a lot of anxiety? Like what was that like for you?
I don't think I've ever shared this.
We get deep in this show. I love it.
I'm like not even making this up. I developed this like twitch in my eye. When I was having conversations with people, I would feel my eye just like doing its own thing. And I'm like,
Yes.
what the F is happening right now? And my wife's like, you are under so much stress. And the stress was not stress that I liked. So I could lead hourly associates. I could lead peer managers. I could lead junior managers. I could not stomach some of the leadership I had and the approach and the knee-jerk reactions and everything's changing and blah, 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 blah. All the while you and I have already established that I wasn't completely invested, which is my mistake. I own that. But you said at the beginning, what were some of the behaviors? It's true. Like I wanted to protect my family, but could anyone watching believe that by me trying to protect my family, I actually ostracized them because I was obsessive about work and getting noticed and trying to put myself in a position to do something that I actually enjoyed, and that I started being less committed to my marriage and my father and being a father and accepting the fact, which is inhumane to me, that sometimes I wouldn't see my daughter for 3 days in a row because I was on a night shift and, just the way it worked out. Like it was.
No, I can totally believe that. I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but you get in that space where I think the heart of this kind of stress is it's emotional stress versus outside pressure type stress. And internal stress versus external stress is so much harder to deal with, and it's so much more painful in a way that we don't normally think about pain, that we almost have to obsess. Our brain goes, we can't function if our insides are broken. And so that's what I think the natural progression of it is. I don't think that's strange at all. I think that's actually completely normal that you would start to obsess about it because you needed it to be fixed. You knew that you could not continue in that emotional state of stress. And so what led you to kind of being able to get out of that and make realizations and have some more self-awareness around it? Because I imagine in the moment when you're so focused on trying to fix it, there's often actually a lack of self-awareness, even though you're thinking so much about like your own situation. It's almost like you're completely self-aware without being self-aware at all.
I was oblivious. I was in this strange place where actually no decisions that I was making that I thought would progress the situation to a favorable place were actually good decisions. So how did I get out of it? I basically just got myself fired, essentially. I started cutting corners left and right, nothing safety related or anything like that. But I just started to just not care. Like my shift was on lock. Like we had it, we were going, and I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm just like, okay, you guys got it. Let me know if it was unthinkable to do that. Right. But there's just a part of me that just stopped caring. And that's not like me, like not from my background and not from what I'm about. But and then I had a gateway to potentially go to another facility with people I knew and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I made enough mistakes to where I potentially could have got terminated. I'll never really know. But I ended up resigning. And that conversation with my wife, she's just like, it's time. I mean, she's just like, it's time. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but we continued talking. And people find it funny that I say it this way, but she gave me permission to quit. And she became my safety net. And she's an Army veteran. And so we have like the military service in common, but she gave me permission to quit. And like we kind of talked about when we discussed whether we were going to do the show or not, I was like, okay, well, I don't have a business plan or anything like that. I didn't even think about starting a business. I just needed a way. So we got renters for our house in Austin. We're super lucky. First people we talked to were the people that are in our house right now. And we moved into my in-laws basement, this tiny basement, from a huge 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom house in Austin and a town of about maybe 3,000 people in BFE, Virginia.
Uber small. Yeah.
Like ridiculous. Like no one locks their doors. I mean, it's just kind of like whatever. And here I was, and I was 37 years old at the time. And I posted about this, and I'm just like, I did what I had to do. Like, I know so many people in my situation would never have done that, but I needed to do it. And it allowed me, although it was stressful in a different way, it allowed me to start exploring my curiosities. Like, what is it that actually just makes me tick? And eventually I kind of deemed myself unemployable. There's a dude I know who was a really high performer at Amazon who left also under not so great circumstances. And now he was at another very popular retailer. He's like, hey dude, I'm hiring. I'm like, I mean, this is 2 weeks after I was in Blackstone, Virginia. And I was just like looking around. I'm just like, no, like I have to see this through. Like, I don't know what this is, but I have to see it through. So eventually I just, like I said, I deemed myself unemployable. I'm like, that's it. Like, I am going to start a business, which is not a good way to start, but I just explored my curiosities. And I think you mentioned, something about, financial situation or something like that when we briefly talked. And here's the deal. I actually put us in jeopardy. Yeah, we didn't have rent. We didn't have daycare costs. We didn't have all these other things. But I started buying camera equipment left and right like a complete idiot because I thought that was going to help me progress faster when you and I
thought
both
you were investing in your business and making a smart move. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. So I did all that. And then I kind of wisened up a little bit, started doing a couple courses. But the biggest thing that I did that improved everything was Pedro, it's not near Lynchburg. It's Blackstone, Virginia. But I started following Gary Vee, and I started following him not long before I left Amazon, but I started listening to him religiously. And then I made sure I got a ticket to a conference in Los Angeles to where I could meet him backstage and all this stuff. And I just started following him religiously. And I got to ask him the very first question at this Q&A because I studied and I was strategic. And I was like, I knew where the microphone was. I knew the whole deal. I had my squadron patch to give him. I wanted to be memorable. And then that was that. And then I met him backstage. And then I met him a few more times after that, including an interview. That's another story. But there's very, very few people who in the content creation community and influencer community that have always kind of steered me the right way. I mean, there's no one that's always steered me the right way. As a matter of fact, it's always been him. And some of the advice that I took from him was advice I didn't even hear from him yet. Some of these ways to just really curate your happiness by just making decisions that are predicated on what you want out of life and what you're willing to invest in and not letting it be driven by money. And that's where I find myself today is having started a company that just, I don't want to say came into existence, but it was just fascinating adventure, I guess is the only way to put it.
So how long did it take you from being in, so first of all, are you still in your, was it your parents or your parent-in-laws?
My in-laws. No, that was 6 months. That was 6 months. Thank God.
So you were there for 6 months. I have a similar experience where after we had a lot of success in our diffuser bead business, we ended up moving, had success, but then had some failure and then moved in with my folks. And when we moved in with my folks, I should say I moved in with my folks, and Ben, my husband, had to sleep in the van because my parents did not like him. And they went, he's not allowed in the house, like a dog. He's not allowed in the house because we had eloped and got married down in Las Vegas and in the Red Rock Canyon. And we didn't tell them, and that broke their hearts a little bit. And I was still the daughter, so like they were nice to me. Of course, in a bit of a condescending way. Well deserved. Everything I got, totally deserved.
Yeah.
Um, but I can totally relate to what I think you probably went to, which was stress of the situation being not ideal and not the way you wanted, but also a certain sense of freedom to not be as tied to things that you once were that were causing you that emotional pain. And those things were gone. And there was there a sense of relief there while you were
There's
kind of being
yeah, there was
discoverable and curious and kind of following your
absolutely.
passions a little bit, or at least
Absolutely.
discovering what they are?
Yeah. So I felt so much better. And I started realizing, wow, I never saw my daughter. Like, because I was spending so much time with her, I was like, this is kind of crazy. So it was fantastic. I started getting closer with her, and I'm just like, she's everything to me. So that was huge. However, it's a different kind of stress I now entered, right? I was now living, and there was a point, probably month 4, where I'm flying and I'm doing all these things and I'm doing free work. And I knew, I was like, okay, I'm starting with video. Now I'm going to do some storytelling. And I was all over the place. And I mean, she'll never see this, but my mother-in-law started just dropping a couple of breadcrumbs of things like rent free,
Yep.
like
The
just
passive
like,
aggressive mothers
oh,
are
dude, like,
queens at it. Yeah.
oh man, like,
And
I mean,
they'll
it
be
was,
on paper, they're being really nice, but it's those little, like, the tone of the last word they said or one word they choose to use, and it completely makes you have this, it's almost, I don't even know how to describe that feeling that
yeah,
you get.
it's very intuitive. It might as well just be said because everyone knows who's putting down what, right? Like
Yep.
I'm tracking. I got it. So that started happening a little bit. And actually this part I never mentioned, but my parents were like, what do you mean this is what you're gonna do? Like that sounds like a hobby.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I was like, well, I'm doing it. And I just kind of let it go. I was like, I don't have time for that. My energy, and I posted about this recently, my negative energy started to transform into very encouraging energy, which is a term, I mean, like I just like started using recently, but I was just like, okay, like just wait. Like I know who I am. I was discovering who I am, and I'm like, there's literally nothing that could get in my way. So when push came to shove, one day my mother-in-law just made an unbelievably descending comment about my daughter's appearance. I mean, it was not a huge deal, but I was like, enough, and blah 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 blah. And it was just like voices were at 10 and 10, and
Yep.
it was all in front of, I mean, it was awful. It was in front of my daughter, and actually, yeah, it was in front of my daughter and my wife, and then I was told to get out. And then I got in my car, and on my totally weak Instagram account, I was like, I am now homeless. Like, I'm literally homeless right this second. Like, I don't have anywhere to go. I'm in Virginia. My parents are in Florida, blah, 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 blah. Like, no one has room for me. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I was just like, I'll figure it out. So we kind of had a little bit of a grace period, cooling down, and we picked up and left. And my wife found a good position in Leesburg, Virginia. So we went there for a little while. Sorry about this alarm.
No
Leesburg, Virginia, for a little while until we joined my COO, who's down here in Wilmington, North Carolina. But that experience, look, here's what I'll say. It might sound awful, and I look back on it, and it was a little bit crazy and whatever, but it was necessary for this path that I'm on. Everything, Amazon, the MBA, like all of it was so unbelievably necessary to help me to where I am today. And that is the hardest thing to try to impart on aspiring entrepreneurs, is that like this thing is the unsexiest thing you will ever do, and it is going to make you the happiest you will ever be.
Yeah. So a comparative story would be, in my first business, Diffuser Beads, and also in my second business, Graphics Creations. So me and my husband, we've worked a lot on our relationship over the past 10 years that we've been together. But back then we didn't take it, no one had taught us what it meant to be a good spouse, what it meant to be a good partner. And we had extreme levels of stress when we were staying in our parent, my folks' house. working really hard, like working all the time. And sometimes there would be arguments where I would end up crying on the floor, and Ben would end up so angry that he would punch holes in the wall.
Oh
So
yeah,
like
been there.
as classic as you can think of a horrible couple movie scene, like something that you would deem as so unhealthy that I would get advice from anyone I would talk to, you should leave this relationship. This is not how a healthy relationship functions. But what I'm guessing that you and your wife have, which is what Ben and I have, is extreme commitment. When we got married, that those vows meant something to us, and then also at the same time we have an emotional connection where like we've decided we will fight for each other through thick and thin. And that means even when both of us are struggling to such a point we don't know how to deal with it, because no one's ever taught us how to deal with those levels of stress, or what to do when you get so angry you have to do something with your body, which is how my husband and he's again so much better now. He knows to like go cool off for a minute when he gets upset, like all these different tactics and things that you learn. But at that time, like it's an incredible in the moment loss of control, I would say, where you are trying your best to control everything with all of your might and none of it's working. And I have to commend you for having the wherewithal to like make that mental shift from being like, fuck it, I'm homeless, this sucks, to be like, but it's okay, I got it. Because I think that's a place a lot of people never get to. And I'd love to ask you, what do you think led you to be able to do that? Because a lot of people in your situation, one, both when you were at Amazon, would have stuck at that job to a point where they were so unhappy they killed themselves. Or then when they get in the situation where they have a big argument in front of, daughter, wife, family, they go, I'm a piece of shit. Like, I'm not going to try anymore. Or like, I suck. So what allowed you to be able to make those mental shifts to like make positive progress and turn that negative energy into encouraging energy?
I've been thinking about this so much. And when it comes to, I'll talk about my marriage here in a second, but I am so much less afraid of being alone than I am of being surrounded by the wrong people. Cynicism, negativity, misplaced values, all these things are easy to latch onto. We all know that person that if you give them a sob story, or if you give them an inch of, you saying poor me, then they could take it another step and exacerbate that. And just the mental health. Look, like I've been through a lot of different things in service, and a little bit, a couple of things before service, but I know how important mental health is. I've seen the adverse effects, and I've seen what is how I can live and how I cannot live is really the only way to put it. And I'd bet my chances alone anytime rather than being around what I don't need to be around. Now, when it comes to my wife, you mentioned vows. Like, I truly have never thought of the commitment piece of it more than I have thought of she's a once in a lifetime person. Like,
well, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. And the manner in which we met and how it all unfolded is even crazier story. But I just knew. And I would never in a million years find another Anne. So for me, I was just like, well, I hope I don't ever disappoint her to the fact where she's like, it's a wrap. And I've never sensed that. And I'm just so unbelievably fortunate that she's like just completely had my back on this entrepreneurial journey. And I literally hear her on the phone with the nonprofit she works for, and she mentions my name and the things I talk about all the time. And I don't mean she's bragging about me. She's just been like siphoning the knowledge that she hears from this office.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm like, okay. So, but without that, which is a very, very important point I feel compelled to make. Hey, Allison, is that transparency and the conversations, like absolutely have to be had. I think if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, if you don't have the buy-in of your family, it could be very well a recipe for disaster. And meaning, if there's even like a smidge of them, like, but if you mess this up, if you fuck this up, and you make us like, if you put us on the street, if there's even some of that, like, it needs to be like, no way, like, we got
100% in.
Yeah, like, it has to be.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, then you won't be able to withstand all the ridiculous things that happen, and the fluctuations and the emotions and the prospects and the clients that blow you off, or the clients that are unbelievable nightmares and all these things, and the unpredictable income, like all that, you're not going to be able to withstand it if you're not all in. So that commitment, I think, needs to be in unison for both, for everyone's sanity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I have a lot of that with Ben as well, where and for us it's a little bit different because he's always struggled, I think, with his own self-esteem issues a lot more than me. Now, I struggled much earlier than he did and was very aware of it. So I went in high school, my parents forced me to go to dialectical behavioral therapy because I actually cut myself for a very brief period in high school. Was incredibly emotionally distressed, but very, very good at hiding it. Like, people were completely shocked, had no idea. And so I was also, I think, from an early point on, very aware of how I absolutely could not live my life. And that when I reached some of these emotional places, I had to figure out how to fix it, so to speak, or how to improve, maybe not fix it, because it took me a very long time to quote unquote fix it, but just how I could do better and make improvements, and that if I could make one little improvement to get further from that situation, that I knew things would be okay. And luckily, I think my husband Ben, he's had that kind of 100% all in with me attitude from the beginning, where wherever I decide that we should go, he follows without question.
I
He goes,
love that.
I'm gonna go there. I have zero thoughts about why we shouldn't. If you think it's a good idea, it must be a good idea. Now, sometimes it wasn't a good idea. And, that's why I'm like, man, I wish he'd have told me this is a bad idea. But I think, having that level of commitment of, if you're in, I'm in, has been definitely one of the things that has held us together through any other types of stresses, is like, we're in this together, no matter how hard it is, no matter what it is. It's both of us together. And that's really significant towards not being alone, in terms of, like, when you struggle, having someone else there. And especially now that we've worked on our communication and on our just being there for each other in the ways that we're different, because I think men and women tend to be quite different. And we definitely fell into I'd say the mental space early on of, we had so many similarities, we thought we were the same. Like, we grew up, we're very similar ages, we like the same things, so we thought, we must think the same ways. And in reality, we think completely differently. And so being able to work through those differences in how we process emotions and how we interpret different situations was a real struggle for us. But because we had that all in together mentality, we always worked together. Even though there was fighting afterwards, we would always come together, work through it in a way where we felt like, man, if we could just get through that horrible fight, we could do anything. Like, nothing can break us up. We're going to really be successful at this whole relationship thing at some point in time, as long as we keep working together and trying our best efforts and giving our full commitment in terms of our energy and our hearts, really, like, driving through your heart, that even when my emotions are telling me I'm so angry or I'm so unhappy, that I know my heart is still speaking to loving this person and being there for them. So it's really cool to hear that you have a similar story in that aspect. So what's happened since then with your business? How has that gone? And what are some, changes that you've seen in yourself through this process of entrepreneurship and going from working for other people and being in a super structured environment to having this, like, massive amount of freedom and decision and lack of structure? I mean, I'm sure you created your own structure, but what was that like?
Yeah, I think I realized I will always work for myself from here on out. That's one of the first realizations. The second thing is as far as how the business has gone. I mean, I recognize the need, and that's just a lot of C-suite executives don't have time to make content, don't want to make content, deserve to be visible, have a lot of freaking value to bring with the people on all the platforms that we hang out on, and like, look, I can make that easy for you. So it started off with free work and me having no idea what I was doing. And it evolved a little bit more into kind of strategic storytelling and not necessarily promo videos and the kind of sexy things that we can make, but I don't prefer to make those. And just really kind of humanizing and making these people authentic as possible. And look, like video is video, like anyone could set up a camera, but the way we do it is a very nonchalant, unassuming way, so that way they can just be exactly as they are. And there's a lot of coaching involved, and I think like that's one of the most gratifying pieces of this all, is that it's not easy for people to just get on and talk like you and I do sometimes. Like we could literally just talk for an hour and not stop about whatever, right? But some people are not like that. And actually I was doing some client work today, and he said, hey, we're in the middle of filming, and he goes, I just wanted to say thank you. He's like, I didn't want to make that post, but I'm glad I did. And it's a post that's doing well. He was so unbelievably vulnerable for a professionally embarrassing situation, but he put in the takeaways about it. And for this person, that's a tremendous step.
Breakthrough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous breakthrough. So all that is happening. Had some great clients, and here's what and I'm sure you could resonate with this, but some of the clients in the beginning were ideal clients, where now here I am like 18 months later, they're absolutely not ideal clients and they're no longer with us. Like what you need in the beginning is absolutely not what you need as you progress and your skill set deepens and your price point changes and your offerings change, and you know what you want, you know what you know what you don't want.
And even discovering where your value applies the most to actually be valuable. And so you go, man, that person, I gave them the exact same level of service, amount of coaching as this other person, and this other person used that info and got so much more value out of it. And honestly, when you're in a position, I think that you are, what you get more out of it than obviously the financial part is important, but the fulfillment of really helping change people's lives through video, not just because of the marketing sense, but because it is a form of self-discovery on its own. It's a form of personal progress that I have very similar experiences with clients who at first were really not interested to make video emotionally, and then fall in love with it because they realize how much it's making them better. It's making them happier. It's opening them up creatively to new ideas that they had closed their mind to. They went, I can't do this. And now they think, I can do this, or maybe I can do this. And it's a really powerful thing to feel that you instigated that, or were even a part of it in any regard.
It's the best. I like to say, I like to help people become unwrapped. Like I that is literally my favorite thing. And it's a pleasure. It's a privilege. And I mean, it's just never about the money. But here's one thing I wanted to add. Between my COO, Eliza, and I, what I thought we could do changes every month for the better. We tap into different areas, and look, like we're not an expert everywhere, of course not, but we are restructuring. Like we're essentially like at the limit for our client roster. And that might sound funny to some people, like what? Like, why don't you want to scale? It's because I want to just be brilliant in the basics. I really feel like she keeps saying, like, we are a quarter turn away from something very, very special here. And I agree. So I'm like, okay, let's just go all in on who we have. Let's just cut down on entertaining, calls, and it's a very unique and potentially amazing opportunity. And let's just focus, like heads down, completely focus. And what I'm learning is just the evolvement of your offerings and your service should be something that you keep tabs on regularly. Because if you decide like this is it and we're just going to be really good at that, then I believe there is a level of complacency that could come in. But more importantly, I've learned, and I know you know what I'm gonna about this, but sometimes you're too in the business, and I don't want to be in the business. And like we're slowly
Yep.
putting the pieces together to remove me from a lot of these things. But Quentin Alums, who I had on, he talked about the visionary and the integrator. Like I'm
Yes.
absolutely
Yes.
love to be the visionary. Like I
We
can
are so
see,
similar, Rich.
yeah. Like I can see 3 miles down the road. Like I could see it, but I don't want to check my email today.
You don't want to be the integrator at
No,
all. Yes.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. So that's what I've learned is hugely important for our success, because the more I'm tied into it and the more I feel the need to like make sure all this stuff is going right, and it's going to take time before we have all the things exactly in place for people to carry them out. But the minute that changes, I mean, game on, like
Yeah.
game fucking on. Like it's going to be big.
Yeah, no, I'm also definitely a visionary, and I only came to realize it through an amazing business coach and now my partner Jesse Johnson, who is absolutely an integrator.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know there were two different. I thought I did everything. I
Same.
was like, I run my own business. I've always done everything in my businesses, so I must be everything. And realizing, wow, the areas that I love the most are also the areas where I add the most value in, and I am the best in those areas. It doesn't make sense for me to focus almost at all. Now, I still learn about integration and how it
Yes.
can apply to what I'm
Yep.
doing, but I don't want to be executing integration. And so
Nope.
luckily I have a partner now who that's his superpower is integration and being able to really put these crazy ideas that I can spit out all the time into the exact right places they need to be. I am so good at ideas,
Yes.
but I'm too much in the vision to see where they should go. I'm in space, my head's in space, dreaming of these giant, amazing value creation things that I couldn't possibly see the detail of how they should all fit together to actually work and operate. So that's really cool to hear that you're in that same space. But I also want to second that it takes a ton of time
Yes.
to set things up. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the process of setting up a coaching community. We have like soft launched it so we can get data and feedback, but I know it's going to take a year, 3 years of really working on it all the time and integrating the ideas I have and testing them and looking at the feedback and tweaking and optimizing and constantly changing that value offer that we have, and seeing who it applies to the most before it is the vision that like it's huge in my head.
Yes.
But I know it's gonna be a while to get there because I can't integrate it. I can't make it happen alone.
Yes.
And finding those people to complement you and add that value where it's 1 + 1 = 7 is such a phenomenal thing. So I'd love for you to maybe quickly talk a little bit about your COO and how she complements you and how you guys work together.
Yes. Let me say one thing.
Yes.
To the outside person, like I love how you said head in the clouds dreaming. Like to the outside person, that might sound and seem like laziness. Like what? You're just sitting. Oh, sorry, 1 second.
Oh, yep.
We should be back. Like you're just sitting there, like dreaming stuff up. Like what the hell does that mean? Like you get to chill? Like no. I've done every job that this company will ever have up to this point. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is the you said the 3 years, however many years. Like I'm now in that same mentality. I have realized like pump the brakes, brilliant in the basics, brilliant in the basics, brilliant in the basics, and then we could look at scaling. Like I literally thought I needed full-time employees not long ago, like which is like insane to me. Like no,
Yep.
you don't. No, you don't. Like, I want that, but that's not what I need.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a very, very big difference. So, as far as my COO, Eliza is one of the most, she calls herself a professional friend. And I need to tell the story of how we met. My first friend that ever passed in the military, his name was Ryan Ionelli. He passed away in combat.
Sorry.
It's okay. So we went to his funeral and I met a lot of his friends, including Eliza, her sister Patricia, and a whole bunch of people. This happened a few months before my squadron went on deployment. So I stayed in touch with all of them and we called them the prayer squad, and they would send me messages and care packages and whatever. So we maintained a friendship, and she would visit wherever I was from time to time, because she was a consultant and traveling everywhere and doing all these things. And we just stayed in touch. When I was at Amazon, she'd help me there, all these different things. So I had an assistant who, for whatever reason, I thought was going to solve all my problems when I was very, very early stage. And it ended up being like, hey, why don't we add this on to my services? And I was like, I don't give a shit about that stuff. Like, that didn't make sense to me. It completely rubbed me the wrong way. So I was like, forget it. I had Eliza come up to Leesburg, Virginia, and we sat at a Panera, and she's like, I'm pressing record. And I'm like, okay. So she recorded our conversation, and then she just asked me a million questions. And then she basically offered to work for nothing. And I was like, you're nuts. So as soon as she came in, everything changed. I mean, everything changed. I had my sounding board. I literally, she's never not responded to a text. Like, we talk, and she's so unbelievably excited about the potential. And like, when the two of us, and I know you know how this is, like when you get together, like at that level, like we are not scared of anything. Like, we could lose all our clients tomorrow and be like, bet, like this is going to be fun to figure out. This is going to be fun to figure out because I know we got something special. So what she does truly is allow me to be exactly who I am in the business sense. Obviously, there's a very big difference between your personal life, like someone accepting you as you are, and in the business sense. And James Orsini, who was Gary Vee's COO for a long time, I said, how do you wrangle a dreamer like that? He's got ridiculous ideas. He's got cereal. He's got this. He's got this. He goes, you don't wrangle a dreamer. He goes, you make their dreams happen. And I was like, I was not expecting that. And that's exactly what she does for me. And she's just phenomenal. I don't know how to explain it. I literally think about it all the time. I'm like, if she ever comes to me, and we're basically family now. I mean, like my daughters love her to death and all these crazy things. Like, she's super close with our family. But I always think, like, if I were to lose her, that would be like an unbelievably devastating blow because of just like the support. Just the support, not to mention all the operational stuff she does, but just the support is met, not the support, but even like the problem solving and the troubleshooting. Like, we are so aligned.
I feel like there's no problem you can come across that you two together could not solve.
Yeah, it's just exciting. Like, I'm like, I just feel like we're the Avengers and like we're just gonna make things happen. So it's really, really difficult. But you know what? That relationship is a decade in the making. And I'm just super fortunate. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Well, I think, yes, you're super fortunate, but there's definitely something about you that drew her in. She could have worked and chosen to work with 100 other people, any of those other people who showed up to that funeral, right? Who she had a close relationship with. And there must be something that she saw in you that made her feel like, this is the person I want to invest in. And the reason I say that is because my partner, Jesse, kind of did the same thing for me. He saw one of my posts where I was like very transparent about my situation. I'd been following kind of my story and said, hey, have you ever had a business coach before? I went, no. He was like, what if I, mentored you? I was like, I can't really afford you. He went, I didn't say anything about money. I see potential in you. Part of my mission and life goal is to impact and help leaders who are going to help other people in a really profound way. And I believe that you have a huge potential. And he started coaching me for free. He makes a lot of money coaching other people. And I was completely taken aback by that. But our relationship has grown, I think, in a really amazing way to where we have that same thing. Like, we come together, and when I have an idea, he's like, great, let's do it. That's a great idea. Like, let me help make that a reality. And here are the things. I'll help you plan this out to where it's going to be successful. And yes, there's going to be issues that come up, but we're going to be able to solve every single one of them because I know how to map out problems, and he knows how to map out problems. I know how to come up with ideas that end up being solutions when they're applied to those problems in the right way. So I think what a lot of visionaries have a hard time with, and I had a really hard time with this in my previous businesses, was things would go really great, and then there'd be a problem. And I had a bunch of ideas about how to solve the problem, but had no idea which one was the best one, or how to evaluate them, or how to integrate and apply them properly. And so I tried a lot of things, investing in my glass blowing business, where I lost money, and I failed not only lost money, but like put myself into such a worse emotional position and such a worse position for my business in general, and felt like I had no idea how to fix it or make it right. And now together we're working on, a lot of different things, like,
Yeah.
both my businesses and then our joint venture kind of coaching group we're creating, coaching
Love it.
community. And every time I feel that feeling that I would feel as a younger entrepreneur of, this is starting to get stressful and I'm not enjoying it, I tell him and I communicate, hey, here's what I'm like really not enjoying about it. He goes, okay, well, let's talk about that and like map it out. And like
Yeah.
he asks the exact right questions. I'm sure your COO knows how to ask some really good questions,
Yeah.
which I think is a superpower for sure. And
Yeah.
when I come up with the answers out of my own mouth, I'm like, oh, okay, I have the answers already. I just didn't even know the questions to ask myself to be able to get to the solution. And then
Yep.
once we get to the solution, it's like boom, 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 because he's so good at all this systemizing and all the
Yeah.
processes and mapping it out, to where it immediately feels like so much better in this way, where I'm definitely still like evolving emotionally and in
Sure.
business. Even though I've been in business for 10 years, I still think I'm a very young entrepreneur
Oh yeah.
for where I plan to take it. I plan to be in business my whole life till I die type of,
I love
working and drop dead one day. Um, but that transformation that you start to see within yourself from having that partner, I think is really profound.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I just want to say about her is it's hilarious. Well, I guess two little things. Whenever I go on like my mini rants, and I'm like, look, like we are not here to just give deliverables. Like we are here to coach and mentor. Like they came to us for a reason or whatever. Not saying that she doesn't agree with that, but when a client situation pops up, like, look, I'm an emotional guy. Like I feel things very deeply, and I'm obviously come from a background that's, I would say a little bit more aggressive in terms, right? So like some of that lingers from time to time, and sometimes the emotional part of me, gets
Rises up.
get thrust into my like decision making. And I would say 90% of the time I'm right. And I don't mean that like sarcastically. I just mean like my gut instinct is I'm very in tune with my radar. But I mean, literally, I could say all these things, or I could text her like a mile long text, and she'll just say heard. Like literally, that's all she says, and I'm like, okay. And then like that literally brings it from a 10 to like a 2, and I'm like, okay. And then that's it. But it's a fantastic thing, and we have a lot of work to do. But like you, I think I'm in a favorable position, and the most important reason that all this even works is because I actually give a shit deeply, deeply, deeply about what I'm doing. And if I didn't, I would never be able to summon the energy, and there would never be enough caffeine in the world
Yep.
to keep me motivated to do this hour after hour after hour and problem
Day
after
after
problem
day
after
after
problem.
day.
I mean,
Yep.
that's just the way it is. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. So I think this has been this has definitely been one of my favorite interviews so far. Not just because I think you're amazing, but I think this journey that you've shared with us is something so relatable. Even if you don't have the exact same journey as Rich, you definitely have experienced at least one of those things he's been through and described, because it is the journey, not just of an entrepreneur, but of, I think, a human being who wants to be great and make an impact on the world. There's a lot of struggle in getting to that point where you have that confidence, that undying belief. I can remember so many times in the beginning of my career, so many more doubts, and I have zero doubts anymore. Sometimes I might question something, whether it's the best idea or whether I should look at it more closely, but I have no doubt in what I'm going to accomplish in my life and the great things I'm going to achieve. And I think that's part of that ability to feel motivated all the time, is even when you have those questions of like, man, this week we didn't make as much money as we really wanted to, that you very quickly reason in your head and process and go, that's okay. I just need to look at it a little bit more. I need to look at it a little bit differently. I'm still 100% certain that I'm going to get there, wherever there might be that you're trying to get to. So thank you so much for sharing just all of this info, all of your journey, being vulnerable on this show. And everyone watching right now, please go ahead and share this. I think there are tons of people out there who are really going to listen to this, and something's going to click with them that helps them in a very significant way. Just like you listening to Gary Vee had a really profound impact on you. I would say for me, even more than Gary Vee, not Ed Milet, MF CEO, what's his name?
I don't know.
I'm blanking on it right now, but the owner of the super supplements, founder of the super supplements chain, totally having a brain fart.
Yeah, that's okay.
He has an incredible story of, almost dying because he got stabbed in the face, starting up, his own super supplement stores, where the first day he made $0. The second day,
Andy Frisella.
And thank you, Andy Frisella. Yeah. That had a really profound impact on me to realize, like, man, everyone who's really, really successful struggles so much,
Totally.
not just with their business, but with who they are. And that work on yourself is what leads to success. If you can become a person of integrity, of honesty, commitment, of action and discipline, and love yourself through all of that, and really work on your own self-worth and self-perception, like, you are guaranteed to be successful in whatever it is you do. And really buying into that concept that if I committed to myself 100%, that I would be able to achieve anything in my life that I really wanted to. And that process, I think, is an ongoing process your whole life, because as you reach one, and this is also just straight from Andy Frisella, as you reach your full potential, your potential then grows.
Yes,
there's no limit to your potential, because once you reach a certain spot, now you have all this extra brain power, all this extra emotional space to go even further. And so to be your best self, you always have to be applying that discipline, applying that self-awareness, applying that self-love, and taking care of yourself. So when I say self-love, I don't just mean thinking nice thoughts about yourself. I mean, taking care of your body. I mean, eating healthy. I mean, staying away from negativity and negative people who are going to drain you. All of those things really fall under the umbrella of self-love that allow you to be the best possible version of you. And I think it's something, once you really get into it, you get very addicted to the point where I very actively now notice, and I used to be, I love food, you guys. I love food so much. I love dessert. If I could and it was healthy, I'd eat nothing but dessert. Like, I don't even care about meat. And I love meat and all the other foods, but like, dessert is heaven. And I very actively will take periods now, because I like to feel that feeling of discipline and working on myself, where I go, you know what? No desserts for a week, even though it's my favorite thing, or no desserts for 3 days, because it feels better. And I equate this to flavor. We all get pretty addicted to flavor. My favorite flavor is self-discipline. Nothing tastes better than my ability to be exactly what I want to be, and to say no because I know it's good for me. And so once you guys can get into some amount of habits around, I think, some of these areas, you'll realize that it self-perpetuates, and you want to be better and better, and you get addicted to self-improvement, into, creating value, into living to the truest form of yourself. So just wanted to share that with all you guys. Definitely please share this episode. And Rich, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested, either just to connect with you because they think you're an amazing guy, which you are, or if they're interested in your video services, your social media services, or it sounds like some of your coaching services?
Yeah, Rich at richcardonamedia.com. Just please email me there, or just start following some of my content and see if, I'm what you're about. And if there's any way we might be able to help you, we're always confident that we can. So on LinkedIn, Rich Cardona. And I mean, I could not plug the podcast that you've been on, but that's called The Leadership Locker. And essentially that was designed really for transitioning service members and veteran entrepreneurs. But this conversation really has brought it full circle, which is the purpose of that podcast, is to make sure people know it is completely possible at 30, whatever, 40, whatever, to be like, I am going this direction, and that's going to be option A, B, and C, and that's it. And like she was talking about, if the commitment's there, anything's possible. So my service after service is trying to interview people who have not served. And so we could get it straight, no chaser. Like, I don't want to live in an echo chamber where veterans are encouraging veterans and the blind are leading the blind. And it's not like there's not successful veterans out there or anything like that. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear from someone who's been through the shit. I want to hear from Gary Vee. I want to hear from Tom Bilyeu, all these different people. So the podcast is there, the Leadership Locker. But I promise you, if you can't find an episode that you like, then definitely contact me and we'll have a discussion about it, because I'd be shocked.
Yeah, and it sounds like, you guys, if you want to be on Rich's podcast, or you know someone who would be a good guest, please reach out to him, because I think podcasts are a really, really valuable form of content that has a much more profound impact than, let's say, text or even sometimes video, because we'll be listening because of the context in which we're listening to a podcast. Yes. I listen to podcasts when I'm working out, which is a way different connection point.
Same here.
Or when I'm making art, so glass blowing. And so I connect with that type of audio because I'm in a completely different emotional state than when I'm on my laptop scrolling through social media. And so let's definitely, everyone who is watching this, please get involved at some level. It really takes almost no effort, no time to reach out to Rich, to share this podcast, to share this episode. So I appreciate all you guys so much. And I know that together we can all change the world in a really profound way. Have a great night, you guys. And feel free to reach out to me as well on LinkedIn or my email address. You guys know it already.